What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ben Builds. This is day 3 of the F-105 Thunderchief. And as we can see here, we're picking up from last time. We have completed both right and left wings. I used the fuselage and the intake here to go ahead and give it a nice shape. And it's all glued down. I didn't attach them yet because we'll do that later on. So the right and left wings with all the flaps and the spoilers and the front slats, they're all done. So we'll put those aside for now. And today I wanted to work on a little few areas here in the cleanup. So we're going to look at the front Vulcan cannon. Now if I really wanted to get crazy here, I could super detail the entire bay. I could come in and hook up a little stretched sprue for hydraulic cables, and I could hook in some photo etched parts, and I could really go to town with this bay, but I don't want to do that. I don't really want everything kind of hanging out. I mentioned earlier in the last episode, or possibly the one before that, I wanted it to be a smooth and very clean build. I wanted to keep it as clean as possible. So we're going to just close up the gun bay, and we're going to just kind of keep it like that. Now right back to the over-engineering issue that I have with this kit. You actually assemble the entire Vulcan cannon. So that means every single barrel has to be cleaned and placed into some sort of a barrel band that sits at the bottom of the whole assembly. That has to be placed onto the motor, the drive motor, or I guess would also be the receiver or possibly the breech in the back of the gun. And then you have to put another barrel band up front, and then you have to put the actual muzzle brake or whatever you want to call it up at the very front of that. And that is barely noticeable when you actually put it into the aircraft kit itself. Word to the wise, if you're going to go ahead and open everything up, you might want to get a replacement gun assembly, or possibly an entire resin area that you could just cut out of this model and pop in some sort of an aftermarket kit. It might look a lot better than what they have here. If you just want to build something to get it up on the shelf, this actually isn't too bad, but I would recommend you look at some pictures and do some detailing on it, just because otherwise it's kind of plain. So every single part has to be cut out and assembled, and the gun itself is not very easy to put together because each of those barrels want to shift around and move. So you could take it really, really slow if you wanted to and assemble one barrel at a time, or you could try to kind of put them all together in the barrel bands and then shift it around from there. It really depends on how comfortable you are. Once you get all the barrels assembled, you're going to have to go ahead and put on another barrel band, and then you're going to have to put on the front nose area. And this shouldn't be that difficult. There are indentations for all of the barrels, and those are just going to fit individually into each of those indentations, and those will line up with the barrels that protrude out towards the end of the gun itself. Now I don't know the technical terms for all of these, so bear with me. Does need to clean up a little bit on the front edge though. They don't really sit flush with everything else, so you might want to do a little doctoring and then just kind of fit them together, and then you might have to readjust some of the barrels with a hobby knife because that's kind of difficult to get everything to line up perfectly the first time. So just kind of put some pressure on it, maybe shift the barrels left or right, whatever the way they need to go, and get those lined up with the indentations so everything lines up perfectly. So we have it assembled, and it's actually going to fit just inside the Vulcan cannon bay here. As you can see, it kind of fits into the bottom. There's a little tab here, so we're going to glue that down. There we go. A little bit of that Tamiya glue will work great for this section. And a little bit in the front here, make sure that everything is nice and glued. I mean, that stuff dries pretty quick. Now the door itself is going to fit right over top of that. Let me see what, here it is. So the door is going to slip right on top of that. How much do you actually see? That's the question. Boy, you don't see much of anything, do you? Huh, that gives me an idea. Okay, first off, this is a tricycle landing gear aircraft. And this is a wasted part here, because if I'm going to close it up, I don't even need the entire gun or the mechanism in there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove it. We're going to pull the gun out, and we're going to fill this with ballast to make sure that it stays up on the 3 wheels. We don't need the gun at all. The gun will be just tossed aside. Most likely not going to keep it or use any parts from it. And we are going to add ballast into the front area of this nose cone. Now I'm going to take a little bit of styrene here and just going to cut a little swatch out of this. and it breaks off. It doesn't have to be pretty because we're going to use this as a backing. And this is more just kind of temporary because we're going to actually put some glue and some weight in there, and I don't want the glue oozing out of the opening. Put a little pressure on it. Shouldn't take much to at least get it tacky so it stays put. And this will actually help a lot too when we start pouring glue. We won't have glue on the inside of our models and they're all over the place. Now we're going to use for ballast BBs. These are copperhead BBs. I don't know the weight exactly. Pour them into a tube, so I kind of keep this and I use this for ballast basically. So we're going to pour a little bit in the front nose bay. It's probably going to go all over the place. That's cool. I'll pick them up later. Not a big deal. And these will give a little bit of weight without going crazy. Because the landing gears that I was looking at earlier, they look pretty flimsy. So I don't want to put too much weight, and I don't want to put extra strain on the landing gears, and I don't want to snap the gears. So just a little bit ought to work just fine. Now we're going to check that. That needs to have a little less ballast in there. So we'll just go ahead and put our thumb over the end there, kind of shove them down to the side, and just dump some back in the box. Now we'll spread them out. There we go. Now, just out of curiosity, let's put this back on and see how it works. Fits right in there. Perfect. Okay, we might actually be able to add a few more maybe. I don't know. Well, let's go ahead and put some glue in it. We're going to use standard Elmer's school glue. Nothing fancy. This stuff is great. And here are the nice things about it. First off, it won't distort your plastic. It won't eat your plastic away like some of the other glues. Second of all, it's water soluble, so it can clean up with water. So if you get glue all over the front of your model, wait till it dries and just peel it right off. Not even a problem there. 3, it's cheap. You can get almost a gallon of this stuff for relatively cheap. Now these are just little ones that I picked up, I think, from Albertsons or Vaughn's or something over in the school supply area, and it's going to last me for a good long while. It looks like I have one little extra. I thought I might get away with one more, but doesn't look like it. So I'm just going to pull that one out. There you are. Come on. There you go. Perfect. So one less ought to be perfect in there. And rearrange a little bit. Also, too, I mean, this stuff is non-toxic, so you can sit there and work on this all day without getting any fumes from the actual glue. So it's good stuff. Works really well for clear parts as well. If you don't have any actual clear cement, this also works very well. So put that aside. Now that the bay door is closed, let's get a little bit of extra thin cement around the edges here. Let that capillary effect take hold. Pull that Tamiya cement down into the crevices and the recesses. Looks good. A little bit on the bottom side here. All right. Work from the back, work to the front. Everything looks good. May need a little sanding after it's all done and ready to go, but other than that, it looks stellar. That's what I'm talking about. Nice. Fits really well. And it's sealed from the back from the glue running out. So looks good. Let's move on. Okay, so another thing we can do too is we have this nose cone, and we're not going to put the radar dish in there or keep the nose cone open. So we're going to also fill that full of BBs as well. We're just going to go ahead and pour a little bit of glue in there at first, and we're going to want to kind of spread that around a little bit. So for that, I'm going to use an old cotton swab that I had used before. I'm going to clip that end off so I don't get a bunch of glue everywhere. And just kind of move that around the inside of the wall there. Oh, come on. There we go. Put one on in there. And now we're just going to pour some from my tube. It was actually a tube of Japanese breath mints that I had from a local Mitsuwa marketplace. So pretty good stuff, and the tube comes in handy. So keep on hold of that. A little much in there, so let's pour a few out. There we go. And again, we're just going to shove some glue down inside there. Fill it all up with glue. Make sure that it all kind of sticks in there. Looking pretty good. I love this stuff. This stuff is great. Elmer's school glue is absolutely fantastic. I would definitely recommend, if you're a model builder, you got to pick some up because it is awesome and very handy to have. For clear parts, for this type of work, it's just great. So we have went ahead and also what you can do too is if you have a lot of thick glue, you can use a syringe or something like this, and you can force some water, or in this case rubbing alcohol, down into there and kind of wash the glue around the different areas, and then you can just pour some back in. So really make sure that these are going to stay put. Nothing is quite as bad as having some bearings or some ballast come loose. Then your model sounds like you're wielding a maraca or something, because it's constantly kind of shifting around. So you don't really want that. You want everything nice and solid. Some model companies will actually produce weights that are shaped like particular parts. I actually have a F-84F that I thought about building, and it has 2 ballasts that come with it. I also have a P-39 by Edward that has a ballast that's molded to fit right inside the front nose. So pretty cool. Now that we have this full of glue, I want to go ahead and make sure the glue's not going to run out. So we're going to take a little bit of this Tamiya. This is the masking tape. We're just going to put 2 pieces over the top of that and just keep everything set up. And we're going to stand it up in one of our handy dandy holders over there. So moving on, let's go ahead and take a look now at the next section we have to work on, which is the cockpit, instrument panel, and all of that stuff there. Now earlier I went ahead and I airbrushed this, a homemade color gray, and we're going to go ahead and detail up the interior. So it's a good time to pull out our references. Now again, I'm using my Cockpits of the Cold War book here, and I got the F-105 marked out. And it looks like there's a few colors in here. There's some yellow, some white, some gray, of course, and then some flat black. So we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of time here, figure out what we're going to paint, and we'll be right back once I figure that all out. Okay, so what I've done here is I've painted a little bit off camera here. I've got black on the instrument panels. I'm going to go ahead and have to dry brush this, which shouldn't be too bad of a process. But this is the next big issue here, is the instrument panel. And this is probably as far as we're going to take it today, because the instrument panel itself, we're not going to hand paint everything on the instrument panel. We're going to use the decal. And we're just going to dip this decal in water for about 3 to 5 seconds. Any more than that, it won't really hurt it, but it will kind of take off some of its tackiness. Any less than that, it'll take forever to come off the back. So we're going to go ahead and use this decal and the instrument panel with a little bit of microsol. Yes, the return of microsol. This stuff is awesome. That's going to help it conform down to all the intricate details that are molded into the instrument panel itself. So once it is ready to go, we're going to take our instrument panel here, and this is going to be a little tricky here. Start at the bottom, pinch it with my thumb, just slide it off the backing. Come on. A little tricky to do. There we go. Now I wouldn't worry too much about, see, it's very hard to hold on to. I wouldn't worry too much about the ultra glossiness of it right now, because what we'll do is when we get it adhered to the instrument panel, we'll go ahead and overcoat it with a flat spray. We have a couple of different types of flattening agents that we can use, and that will help also when we put the microsol on, because it's going to suck it down into the recesses, into the dial faces and all that. So now we're just going to put a little bit of microsol and cover the decal up as best we can, and we're going to go ahead and let this dry. We'll probably have a couple of coats by the time this thing is done, but I'm going to leave it and let it cure. Next time we'll come on back and we'll go ahead and install all of the stuff into the cockpit, and then install the cockpit and all the ballast and all that, put the fuselage together, and we'll be ready to rock on with the wings and tail surfaces and all sorts of things. So tune in next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.